All right, welcome everybody. Today I'm excited to have not one, but two special guests joining us, the authors of Get Paid for Your Pad, How to Maximize Profit from Your Airbnb Listing, and my personal friends, one of whom you may recognize featured in Lifestyle Entrepreneur. Please welcome Jasper Ribbers and Josefa Kapadia. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, good. Excited to be on the call with you guys here, and super excited to talk about your book that's just coming out, Get Paid for Your Pad. But before we get into all that, where are you guys at now in the world? You down in
We're in
LA?
Los Angeles right now.
Nice. And we were just over in Vegas for a couple weeks putting the finishing touches on the launch, and now even though we're in other parts of the world, we're able to get together on a broadcast like this on the internet and continue working. So that's exciting.
Absolutely. Whenever we tell people that we were just in Vegas for 3 to 4 weeks, they're always a bit shocked and confused as how we made it out. But I can tell you that it's good to be back in LA. The rest is definitely much needed, and yeah, we're excited to get to work on some new projects and keep plowing through on this one as well.
Totally. So maybe we can start with a little bit of background on, the story behind Get Paid for Your Pad and sort of the experience that you guys had from starting to rent your apartment out on Airbnb, or even before that, what you were doing with your apartment and your home that led up to sort of the strategies and the step-by-step approach and the stories that are in Get Paid for Your Pad. And so for people that are listening, that may or may not have used Airbnb before, or maybe they have and just played around a little, or maybe there's some intermediate or experts here, but let's start at like a ground level and work our way up to how you really sort of got under the surface and figured this whole thing out.
Sure. So I used to rent out my house long term because I was traveling, and I have an apartment in Amsterdam, and I wasn't very happy with that situation. First of all, the return wasn't very good. Secondly, I didn't like the fact that I could never be in my own house when I was back in Amsterdam. And the third thing is, in Holland, it's very hard to get people out of your house, even if the contract ends. If that person wants to stay, it's very hard to get them out. So you have to go to court and all sorts of trouble. So when I first heard about Airbnb, I was thinking, wow, this sounds much better. I can rent out my house to tourists, and when I want to spend time in my own house, I can just block the calendar. And that sounded like really appealing to me. So I gave it a try about 2 years ago, and it was pretty much an instant success. And I really saw the potential of Airbnb as I was making much more money pretty quickly than before. So I really started diving into all the Airbnb material I could find. I read all the books, all the internet resources, and really spent a lot of time trying to optimize the way I ran my Airbnb business. And this resulted in an income which was about 2.5 times as much as what I was making when I was running it out for the long term. So I was really amazed by this success. I had no idea this would even be possible. So that's one reason why I came up with writing a book, is I kind of want to spread the word, and let people know that this is possible. And secondly, I noticed that a lot of other hosts, as I travel a lot, so I stay in a lot of Airbnb places, and I've noticed that a lot of people are missing out on a lot of aspects, and they could be doing a much better job. And that's the second reason why I wanted to write this book, to sort of help other Airbnb hosts do a better job and provide a better guest experience, and consequently make a better return on their house.
It's funny that you mentioned one of the appeals of using Airbnb was to be able to almost rent out your own house when you wanted to stay there, and in the other time be able to rent it out to any number of people instead of like what you were doing before with the long-term rentals, where somebody's there for months or maybe even years, and it's hard to get them out or change tenants. So it sounds like the main switch from doing long-term rental to short-term is just the ability to, let's say, is it charge more per night to more overall people? I mean, in terms of the earning potential difference between long-term rentals and using like Airbnb.
Yeah, I mean, the flexibility that it gives you is just it's really a major benefit. And when you're renting out to tourists who only stay like for a few nights, you can just charge a lot more than to somebody who will be staying for like 6 to 12 months or even like 2 years or so, because you're really competing with like hotels, and as we all know, hotel rooms tend to be very expensive. So I was really surprised by how much I could charge. I've raised my prices a lot since I started, and if you compare it to a hotel, it's actually still a pretty good deal.
The funny thing is, of all the people we've talked to who've also gotten into the business relatively recently, what they say as well is when they compare the tenants, the long-term tenants versus the short-stay tenants, they notice a drastic difference as far as how well they maintain the space. And this is across the board in all cities across the world. You have the short-stay tenants typically will treat the place much better, and moreover, they usually spend a great deal less time in the unit, and that's because they came to that city to sightsee, to explore, to go out, etc. So it's a vastly different dynamic, which usually works out really nicely for the host.
Fascinating, because I know from talking to you guys and from talking to other people, it seems like one of the biggest concerns about renting your place out on a service like Airbnb is that that people are going to just throw a huge party or mess it up or destroy it. But what it sounds like is that the reality is that people treat it more like a hotel room and a springboard to see the city and the surrounding area, instead of like a long-term tenant who really feels like, hey, this is my place, and I'll do whatever I want to it.
100% right. And Jasper definitely can talk more about this from a personal perspective, but that's absolutely exactly right as far as what we found from all the different people we've talked to along this journey. And Jasper definitely can chime in with his personal experience.
Yeah, I think every single Airbnb host will have this thought before he starts, like, what happens if people destroy my place? What happens if people like steal my stuff? And it's an understandable concern. I've hosted over 100 groups, and I've never had anyone damage my property or steal any of my stuff. It's really been an amazing experience. And one of the people that we talked to for our upcoming podcast, which should be live in a few weeks, he actually told us that by hosting people in his house, he regained confidence in humans. He was super apprehensive about having random people from the internet staying at his place. And then he had some amazing experience where he went out for dinner with people, and people gave him like a lot of good feedback, and it really made him really happy to see how nice people are. You know what I mean?
So everybody out there, remember that Airbnb equals renewed faith in humanity, right? So
that's good. Yeah, because maybe let's differentiate for people that are listening between. I understand there's two ways to approach this. It's either you rent out a room in your place and you're there, so you have the opportunity to meet travelers, host people in your place. On the other hand, to completely vacate your own home, apartment, condo, and have people rent out the entire unit, right? So just for everybody listening, right, is there anything else you want to say about that distinction? Because I know, like, the way you rent out your place, Jasper, is you rent it out remotely and you travel around and you're rarely there, and when you want to stay there, you'll sort of block out the dates that you want to use it. But for some people, the appeal may be to host people that are visiting from other countries or other areas, and like getting to know a different, getting to see a different side of life by hosting people.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I usually don't even meet my guests because I'm typically abroad. But even though I don't meet them, just by communicating with my guests before, during, and after their stay, I still feel like I build a little bit of a personal relationship with them. And if you look at the reviews that I get, a lot of people mention that they thought I was a really good host, even though I wasn't there. So I can only imagine what would happen if you're renting out a room and you're actually able to really give like your guests like the personal assistance, and personally make sure that your guest is having like a great experience. I can only imagine what kind of awesome relationships you could build with your guests.
And so just a quick distinction for the different types of rentals. So that's in two broad categories. You can rent out your entire unit. You can also rent out a room or individual rooms in your home. There's a third option as well for shared rooms. But then again, you could be there, but you're basically now it's sort of more akin to a hostel where you're having different people from different parts of the world sort of share the same space. And one other quick thing I want to mention is we actually interviewed somebody in our book, Get Paid for Your Pad, named Christoph, who's from Chicago, and he has a really great condo in downtown Chicago, and he rents out the downstairs portion of his condominium to guests that come in while he still lives there. And he mentioned how amazing it is from that perspective, right? So now Jasper, in contrast, he rents out the entire unit to people who sort of book it all at once. Christoph has a different side of the story, and you might wonder, okay, well, is it a bit difficult to live there when you have strangers coming in as well? And the funny thing is he raves about the experience. He said, in a sense, what the visitors do, what they want, is they want to experience Chicago. So they're not there so often, and when they are there, they treat the place impeccably. And it often gives him the ability to form new relationships with people from all over the world. So it's really been a fantastic experience for him.
That's really interesting. So the takeaways I'm hearing so far, and for everybody listening, is that you don't need to be worried about your place getting trashed if you're going to put it on Airbnb. And really, the outcome is almost entirely positive. Whether you're staying there and you're renting out a house, then you get to meet new people, show them the best aspects of your city and where you live. Or if you want to travel and sort of put your home entirely on the market, the data shows that in almost all cases, your place will be totally fine and respected and taken care of. Plus, you're earning money on it while you're off doing something else.
Yeah.
So focusing on that, second point, I think it would be interesting if you painted a little picture, Jasper and Huzefa, about what it's like to be traveling in, the other side of the world or another country and be able to manage people checking in, checking out of your place. How have you set up your home such that it can sort of function like a 5-star hotel, even if you're 10,000 miles away?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just tell you how I do it first. I have a cleaning lady that I've known for a long time and that I really trust, and she manages everything for me. And this works out perfectly because she always arrives at my apartment a few hours before the guests so that she has the chance to clean it, and then right after she checks in the guests and she shows them the house and gives them some information about the neighborhood and answers questions. So, and this is how I do it, and this works out really well for me. There's other ways to do it. You can have a separate person who cleans the house and a separate person who does the check-in. That's another option. Or what some hosts do is they don't have a person who checks them in. We just stayed at a house in Vegas, and it was a great experience, and that house had a digital key, like an electronic key, electronic lock, I mean. So when we arrived, they just gave us the code, we put the code in, and we walked into the house. So there's several ways of doing it, really.
And the beautiful part about using something like a Lockatron or one of these other remote locking devices is that every time sort of the guest comes in and they leave, you just change the passcode. So it's another layer of security as well, as you have a rotation of different guests come in and out. And the other thing is it can all be done remotely. Now, the manager of our place in Vegas, believe it or not, resides in Orange County. So that's quite a distance away, but she was able to manage everything remotely, even changing the locks without having any intermediary. So it's really cool.
I didn't even realize that, but if you have electronic locks, then it almost takes away the need to have somebody checking people in and out.
Yeah.
I mean, what it sounds like is like you have somebody you trust, or really it seems like it only takes one person to manage checking people in and out, having a cleaner come in and take care of it. It's a pretty simple setup if you're going to be traveling and having numerous people cycle through the place, right?
Yeah, and I still think it's nice to have somebody personally welcoming the guests. It adds a little bit of extra, like a hospitality aspect to it, I think. But the electronic lock is definitely like a really convenient option, and you don't have to like, if somebody loses your key, you don't have to replace the lock. So it's definitely like a good solution.
Nice, that's awesome. So I know in the book in Get Paid for Your Pad, in the beginning you talk about breaking away from your old corporate job and really having Airbnb, and the way that you've set your apartment up there to be a springboard into getting to travel and see lots of interesting places in the world. And I know both of you sort of broke away from a more traditional career path to become full-time entrepreneurs. Before we jump into some of the tactics on how people can set up their apartment and get their listing optimized, maybe you can talk a little bit about that transition and the opportunity that's available to people, especially if you have a home that can be rented out and sort of managed remotely, almost as a hotel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So when I first quit my job, I knew that I had to start making money at some point. I did have some savings, and I was renting out my house on the long term, but that wasn't enough. So I literally just Googled how to make money online, and I started all sorts of different projects, some more successful than others. But when I started with Airbnb, pretty soon I was making such a good revenue that I could totally support myself just by renting out my house. And that was like kind of a breakthrough moment for me, where I felt like, wow, if I get really good at doing this Airbnb thing, then I don't really have to do anything else, And just to give you an example of a friend who I met last year, he was a doctor on big ships, and when I met him, he told me that he had to go back home because he had to go on another 6-month job to make money because he was running out of cash. So I asked him hey, what do you do with your house? Do you have a house when you're away? And he told me, well, I do, but I rent out some rooms, but it doesn't really make that much money. So I asked him hey, do you want to try Airbnb? So we literally created a listing for him on the same day, and a few months later, I noticed on Facebook, I saw a picture of him in Bali, chilling out on the beach, and pictures of doing all sorts of fun stuff. So I was like, so I sent him a message. I was like, hey man, what's up? It seems like you're still traveling. And he's like, yeah, dude. As soon as I listed my home in Calgary on Airbnb, things just took off. And I decided to keep traveling for another 6 months. So it just
awesome.
It just shows the opportunity that's there, and a lot of people might not even realize what a gold mine they might be sitting on.
And just to give a little bit more background on Jasper, and then I'll quickly explain my involvement as well. Jasper used to be a trader. He used to work in Amsterdam, and then eventually worked in Chicago for a few years, and he did phenomenally well as a trader. And to make this big break was to break away from that corporate job where he was so successful. It was a big mental leap that he had to make. And then the next the sort of subsequent leap after that was, all right, well, now how do I connect the dots? Now how do I enjoy my new life while without having to go back into doing something else like trading or etc. And Airbnb is what bridged that gap and made everything possible. And by the way, I just want to quickly mention, in case you guys are wondering who I am and why I'm here, I was brought onto the project by Jasper, which I'm so thrilled about. This whole book, this whole concept is his brainchild after working with Airbnb for quite some time and analyzing everything very, very carefully and trying to really understand the entire system. And he brought me on because I love to write. I was an attorney for a few years, and now writing is a big part of my life, so he sort of brought me on to help him with that aspect, and I couldn't be happier. And through this process, obviously I've had to do a ton of research about the Airbnb platform, and that's why I'm here with him today and excited to share with you guys everything that we know.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, and the story about, I think it was Chris you were mentioning, is one of the featured case studies in Get Paid for Your Pad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's just fascinating how quickly that can turn the tables. I mean, even an extra 30 or 40,000 in income generating from your house, especially if you're gone for months at a time, can make a huge difference between renting it out long term.
Yeah,
so it's cool that you guys have not only figured this out for yourself, but have also been able to help a lot of other people get similar results.
Yeah, and the cool thing is it's all under your own control, you know? Like whether you want to rent out your entire place and most of the time or the entire year or only like maybe 1 month when you're away, or even if you're just going to go on a holiday for a couple of weeks, you know, it's totally up to you how you want to run it and whether you want to just make like a little bit of extra income to cover a holiday or whether you want to, you know, cover like an extended travel or just use it as more from a professional standpoint as a business like I do. You know, it's up to you to decide.
And you know, the cool thing about Chris's story actually is not only has he been wildly successful with his home, but he's now looking into buying another home for the same exact purposes. So it's been a real light bulb for him and an amazing experience as well from the guests and people that he's met. But we're really excited for him.
Well, yeah, I guess that really illustrates the opportunity that, you know, I mean, with Airbnb growing, just rapidly expanding, so that's a growing pie, a growing number of people that could conceivably rent out your place, that it may even make sense to, you know, get a second home just for the purpose of being able to rent it out full-time on Airbnb. So fascinating on the opportunity that's out there. But look, let's jump into it. And let's say for somebody that's ready to shift from either never having rented their place out before to putting it on Airbnb, or someone that's looking to shift from doing long-term rental to Airbnb, what are sort of the first steps that you should take to make sure that right when that listing goes live, it's looking good from the get-go?
Yeah, so we talk about this in our book, and if you've downloaded the sample chapters that we're giving away, the first chapter is called Preparing Your House, and it talks all about what you need to do to transform your house from a place where you live to a place where you host people, right? And let me just mention like some of the main points. Well, first of all, you want to make sure that the house is very tidy and you don't have too much personal stuff lying around. You know, things that your guests won't need. It doesn't make sense to have it in your house, right? So either put it in a storage unit or, you know, or leave it with somebody else. And the other thing is you want to think about what would a traveler need. You know, walk into your own house and pretend you're a guest and you're from the other side of the world and you just arrived from a long flight. Like what will be your needs? You know, and then go around the house and think about that. Are there enough towels? You know, are there enough sheets? Is there a way to make some coffee or tea? You know, these are just little things, but they're really important to create like a really good guest experience.
And in broad strokes, a really simple way to think about it is your competition, or essentially the people that you're trying to mimic to some extent, are these 4- and 5-star hotels that provide a really comfortable experience. and make guests feel very welcome and very at home. So you want to mimic that experience. You want to provide something similar, or ideally even better. And that begins, just like Jasper said, with the really cleanliness and tidiness. You want to have whatever amenities they're expecting, etc., so they can come in and they can feel at ease while they're on their vacation.
Right, and so some of those things you mentioned was like have a coffee maker with coffee, and maybe even like have a little. I know you guys created a manual, right, or like a guide, almost like a travel guide for people that visit, that sort of outlines the amenities in the house, lets them know, what's in the surrounding area. Is that something else you'd recommend for people to put together right when they're getting started?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very important aspect of the hosting process. As soon as people make a booking at my house, I send them this guidebook that I created, and it covers everything that they need to know. It's like technical aspects of like how do you turn on the TV, how do you turn on the heating, how does the oven work, and what if the internet shuts down, like what do you do, like the gas, electricity, like all those aspects. But then also, I talk a lot about my neighborhood. I give them lots of recommendations for, my favorite local spots. And by sending this out immediately after the person books the place, you immediately create a sense of reassurance within the guest that you're taking care of them as a host. That you're taking your job as a host, you're taking it serious. And I think that's a really important aspect of hosting, to make sure that the guest feels comfortable staying at a stranger's house even before they've arrived.
And just one other thing I'd like to add with respect to the book. Now, when we talk about how to prepare your home, we're doing it right now in very, very broad strokes. But when you look at Get Paid for Your Pad in the section about preparing your house, we have a massive itemized list of all these so actually very inexpensive but really critical factors into optimizing and maximizing the guest experience for anybody who might come through. So it's important to look at the broad picture and understand the general concept. But again, in Get Paid for Your Pad, we have everything broken down in a really easy way to read, so you can kind of understand and implement all these changes.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about walking into your house and imagining that you're visiting from another town. I'm also thinking of like when you walk into a hotel, what is your expectation, right? That the bed is made and it's turned down, that the towels are folded on the rack, that it's clean, that there's a little book on the counter that says what the hotel amenities are and what you can find in the surrounding area. It's sort of mirroring that experience for somebody that's coming to visit.
Exactly, and just to add to that point, what's the main difference between staying at an Airbnb place and a hotel? Even if you try to mimic the hotel experience, there's one big difference. When you go to a hotel, you know that there's somebody there. There's a reception. There's a hotel manager. So if there are any issues, there's somebody that you can talk to, and when you're staying at somebody's place, you're really relying on that person to take that responsibility. And that's the number one concern that I think that people have when they travel with Airbnb. Like, is the host going to be there? Is he going to take care of me? Like, what if I have some problems? Like, who do I go to? And so that's why I think the communication is so important. To sort of take away that concern.
That's a really good point, and so I'm imagining that you address that in your communication before they arrive, as well as in the manual or the guidebook that you provide them, just to like reassure that somebody, even if it's not you, is available to take care of something if there's an emergency or something goes wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now you've got your place sort of set up, and you know what it's going to take to list it and be able to rent it out well. What do you recommend for people that are getting started on Airbnb in terms of like how to structure their listing, any key aspects to focus on? Just like something like having a guidebook. It makes so much sense when you hear it, when somebody explains it and you compare it to a hotel, but maybe that's not intuitive if you're just sitting there thinking, oh, I want to rent my place out on Airbnb. So what are some of the little tricks and tactics for your actual listing, initially setting it up and then managing it over time to have the best experience on Airbnb?
Yeah, so first of all, when you start a listing, and I just want to mention it's completely free. Airbnb doesn't charge hosts for starting their listing. You just pay like a 3% commission on the revenue. But when you're just starting out, it's pretty simple and intuitive on the platform. But let me give you a few things that you want to make sure you think about. First of all, the pictures are really important, and Airbnb provides a professional photographer who will take pictures of your house for free. And this is a great service. So make sure you use it, because I do see a lot of listings where people just put some pictures that they take with the iPhone, and that can really hurt your listing. So make sure you get that Airbnb photography service. And then the second thing I will say is make sure your description is as detailed as possible, because people want to know everything about the place that they're going to stay at, So make sure you go into detail. You mention everything that your house has to offer. But at the same time, don't oversell it. Be very accurate, because based on your description, people will form an expectation of what the experience is going to be like and what your house has to offer. And if you oversell it, then people are going to be disappointed. So it's better to, there's an expression for this, undersell and overdeliver. Is that what they say?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right to me.
I think that's a good way to sort of look at it,
And by the way, there is, and that factors directly into your ratings, because there's particularly a rating called accuracy, right? So if there's a massive distinction on how you described it and what you've actually delivered, then that can affect you adversely.
Yeah. And to give you an example, I stayed at this place in Bali a year ago, and for me, the internet is very important. Having fast Wi-Fi is really important to me, because if I don't have Wi-Fi, I can't work. So I specifically asked the host if his internet was fast, and he told me it was super fast. So I wasn't worried about it, but then I showed up and I couldn't even have a Skype conversation with someone, right? So that's an example of how you shouldn't do it, because I chose that place specifically because of the internet, right? So if there's something about your place that isn't like, completely perfect or whatever, just mention it. If your internet's not that fast, just mention it, and then people who don't care about it, they'll book your place, but people who care about it, they won't.
That's a really good point. It's not just about making it look as pretty as possible to get people booking it and in there. I think it's really about your long-term reputation and people having the experience that they expected to have when they booked your place.
Absolutely. Yeah. The beautiful thing about everything that we're talking about is, at its core, it's all about good customer service. It's all about being straightforward, building that reputation. So it's a win-win for both sides. If you essentially follow these tenets, you will do financially well, and you'll be successful on Airbnb. But it's also going to be great for the guests, because you're going to be that super host that's providing an awesome experience.
Yeah, and you've gotten some pretty rave reviews from your place, and I know, like from looking through the book and everything, that you'll change your listing based on the time of year or if there's a holiday coming up. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, now that you've got your listing up and you've got your house set up and ready to rent, how do you manage it in terms of like seasonality or times that people travel more or holidays, from like a pricing perspective, and how your listing is set up on the site?
Yeah, absolutely. So most people book between like 1 and 3 months ahead of time. So when it's like spring, for example, people will be booking the summer months, right? So then I might change my title and say that it's like a perfect summer home or something like that. Or when we have a special day in Amsterdam, it's called King's Day, where it's a very popular day. There's millions of people coming to the city and celebrating the birthday. And my house is pretty well situated to enjoy this particular holiday. So, if I don't have any bookings for that day yet, then I might, a week or 2 weeks in advance, I might change it to perfect location for King's Day. And talking about pricing, this is probably the biggest mistake that I see hosts make. The way they go about pricing their unit is they sort of come up with a price that feels good or that feels reasonable, and then they just charge that price for every single day of the year. Now, and there's a lot of problems with that, because first of all, you have no idea what people are willing to pay for your place if you don't experiment with it, right? So that's the first thing. And then secondly, demand for your space will probably vary throughout the year. Like in Amsterdam, for example, it's a very popular location in the summer. So sort of like June through September, the demand is really high. Whereas in January or February, it's cold and it rains or it snows a lot. So the demand is much lower during those months. So you want to make sure you recognize what time of the year is popular in your location. And an easy way to do this is to go to the local tourism board or the website and check out the visitor statistics. And then also you want to think about what are the sort of the peak dates. Christmas, New Year, like Easter, or maybe even there might be like some big conferences in town, or big events that draws in a lot of visitors. So you want to adjust for that as well. And then the last thing I'll say is you also want to think about the weekends versus the weekdays. If you're in a business district, then the weekdays will probably be more popular. If you're in a touristy area, then the weekends will be more popular.
Those are all really good points. I mean, I'm thinking back, I think even Airbnb started because people were going to some big conferences and it was impossible to find a room.
Yeah,
and so they're in San Francisco, if you've got the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference or something, all the hotels are going to be sold out. And you could even optimize your listing by saying perfect location for Apple WWDC, and really target a crowd in a specific window of time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And one more thing I want to mention, if you're just starting out, really the most important thing is to build a reputation. So I would recommend people who are starting out to start with a lower price, especially towards the check-in date, to really make sure that you're getting the bookings that you need to build your reputation. So even if you're not even making anything, even if you're just charging a price that just covers the cost, I would still recommend you go that low just to get the people to stay at your place and get those positive reviews, get those bookings, because that's what's going to help you be more visible in the Airbnb search results. And that's eventually what's going to enable you to have a sustainable, viable, long-term Airbnb business.
And within the whole pricing section, by the way, Jasper has gone through, and he has a econometrics background. He knows everything about economics. He's gone through and really sort of explained the economics behind it in broad strokes, and then created this really cool methodology that you can employ when setting a price. And one last thing to mention: if you are going to drastically lower your price below where you think is sort of the real value of your apartment early on to get reviews and customers, it can be a good idea to explain that, to let people know, hey, this is a deal for this particular time, and go ahead and take advantage of it, because the flip side of getting a really low price early on without an explanation, it could lead travelers to be a little bit wary. You're like, wait a minute, this looks too good to be true. Why is it priced so low, etc. So as long as you provide it with a nice explanation, then they'll understand, okay, well, I'm going to get a good deal and I'm going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, you can frame it as like a last-minute deal.
Interesting, yeah. And so I think those are all really good insights on sounds like getting your listing up. You just want to get some initial people in there and get some reviews up so you build your reputation. And then you get more sophisticated with it, you can look around at what conferences are coming up, the seasonality, maybe even benchmarking what hotel prices are in the area, what other people are charging on Airbnb in the area, and then position yourself given what you can offer in your apartment within the market. And I know you talk a lot about that in the book. It's a really useful section on pricing and how to structure that over time.
Yeah, I think the pricing section is probably one of the most useful sections for people, because it's one of the most complicated areas of the Airbnb hosting process. Setting an optimal pricing structure. So we really dive into that subject in very much detail, and we also provide sort of an example setup that people can literally just kind of copy paste and implement. So if you're kind of like a little hesitant to sort of make like tons of calculations and do all this math and stuff, you can literally just copy the example and implement it.
Whoops. Yeah, that's super useful, and I know that there's other like sort of step-by-step processes and copy-paste material in the book to really help people just get. I mean, like the pricing aspect that's really the main difference between renting your place out long term and doing it on Airbnb. If you're just renting it out month by month or have a 6-month or year lease, then you can't price differently if there's a huge festival in town for a weekend, or if in the summertime there's way more demand than in the off season. So I think once you're up and you've got your place available, I think this pricing piece is what really makes the difference by a factor of, I think in your case, it was like 2 to 3x, 200% to 300% more than you were making from doing long-term rental, right? So super important for people to grasp.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, we've been talking a lot about the tactics and how to get started, how to get to an intermediate and even advanced level. Why don't you talk a little bit about where people can find the book? And I know that we put together an offer with a few different bonuses, and let's let everybody know you can get the sample chapters right here on this page. Depending on where you're watching this, there'll be a link to download the sample chapters. But if you want to get the whole book, it's almost 190 pages, and there's a bunch of other bonuses that you've thrown in to really help people achieve this level of success with their home on Airbnb.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to optimizeyourairbnblisting.com, that's where you can buy the book right now, and it comes with free bonuses. So it comes with a copy of my own personal guidebook that you can sort of use to create your own, and it also comes with a membership to a private Facebook group. It's called Airbnb Academy, and this is a group where other Airbnb hosts share their experiences and sort of help each other be a better host. And it's getting pretty active. I was just on it like right before our meeting actually, and there's some really good hosts on there who are giving some good advice, and obviously me and Josefa, like we give our advice as well. But this morning I was really surprised that one of the members came up with something that I didn't know about Airbnb, and so I was really excited about it.
And by the way, just to mention as well,
you want to share what that surprise was?
So I only have one listing, and one of our members runs, I think, more than 10 listings. And his question was, because on the Airbnb platform you can also create a second guidebook for your guests. So it basically, there's a little icon, and you click on it, it says guidebook, and then you can add some local like recommendations, and it will show a map with with the different places. So it's really useful, and anyone can look at it. But his question was, do I need to create a separate guidebook for every single listing? And since I only have one listing, so I wasn't sure about that. And I looked it up, and I found out that this is not possible. But then one of our members, he mentioned that he contacted the Airbnb support, and they actually copied the guidebook to all his listings for him. So that was pretty cool.
That's pretty interesting, and that's just one of the bonuses, right? The Airbnb Academy and the private Facebook community, where you can expand your learning and get new tips. Even the author of the book is learning something within the bonus section. A lot of useful information being exchanged in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we also put the URL up on this page. It's optimizeyourairbnblisting.com. It's got a full description of the content of the book, a little more on Jasper and Josefa's background and story, as well as a full description of all the bonuses that come with the full copy of Get Paid for Your Pad. So was there something you wanted to add, Josefa? I think we jumped on top here.
Absolutely, no worries. So really briefly, again with those bonuses, I just wanted to jump back to the guidebook that Jasper offers, because it's actually it's an amazing tool. Not just because, so first of all, you get to see how Jasper does it, because he's done it in a really clever way. It's organized extremely well. It has pictures, and it gives his insider tips on all these awesome places to go in Amsterdam, right? So that's one of the big benefits of getting an Airbnb place. You get advice from a local, and you know that whenever you travel, if you have somebody there, it's always a much better experience. Okay, that's one aspect of the book, of the guidebook. But another piece that is provided is there's a template to build your own. So it sort of gives you the very bare backbone of a guidebook, so you can build your own and then use Jasper's as a reference to sort of continue and optimize yours until it's a really nice finished product.
Sounds like, you know, on top of the book, which itself is packed with information, you're getting a template and a reference guidebook, so you can quickly turn one around and give people that are visiting your place the best experience possible, plus access to a community of people who are actively renting out their homes in different parts of the world, so you can get experience and share knowledge with other Airbnb hosts. Mm-hmm. And is there a third bonus as well?
Yeah, so we'll also be doing live Q&A sessions where we'll be answering any questions that you might have about Airbnb hosting. So we'll do these on a regular basis as well. So basically, our goal is really to offer like a complete Airbnb consultancy package, really designed in a way that anyone who wants to start an Airbnb listing will have everything that they will need to make it a success.
I think it's a worthy goal, and I think with Airbnb continuing to grow and expand, I mean, they're in new cities, new countries every day, and the overall user base is just exploding as well. So really, I think there's never been a better time to make more, to basically get paid for your pad, and especially if you want the freedom to travel more and be able to increase your income flexibly. Switching from long-term rental to Airbnb, I'm certainly sold. And so how much is the book plus all the three bonuses that you mentioned for Get Paid for Your Pad?
The price is $47.
Nice. So that's at optimizeyourairbnblisting.com, and there's a link here on the page depending on where you're watching it. And then you get not only the Facebook group access, the guidebook and template to create your own, as well as periodic Q&A calls with the two authors who are actively managing a very successful Airbnb listing themselves, as well as regularly coaching and consulting with other people to have the same levels of success. Pretty awesome and pretty great price for a massive amount of value. And I want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing some of your story, some strategies, and tips for everybody that's listening today. Any final thoughts that you want to share? And you guys can take us home here.
Well, I just like to say, if you're thinking about doing it and you're kind of been on the fence, you've been dilly-dallying, etc., do it. Just get on and start going and start learning and start figuring out this whole process, because it's changed Jasper's life, it's changed all these people's lives in immeasurable ways. So that would be my advice, and just do it.
And also look out for our upcoming podcast, which will go live soon, where we're going to be interviewing host, and also providing tips and everything, and we'll answer listeners' questions. So keep an eye out for that as well.
And there's going to be
what's the podcast going to be called, and how can we find out more about that?
It's the same name, so it's going to be called Get Paid for Your Pad. But if you've downloaded the sample chapters, then we'll have your email, so we'll shoot you a message when it goes live.
And we've got a really, really catchy theme song.
I was just gonna put you guys.
Get paid for your pad.
Anyways.
I was gonna say, take us home with the theme song for the Get Paid for Your Past podcast.
Oh, that's just a sample. You got to actually tune in to the podcast to get the whole version.
Oh, that's funny. That's a little inside joke there, but it actually is a very catchy song. So when you guys get to hear it, I'm sure you'll agree. Look, thanks so much, guys. This was a really fascinating conversation. I hope everybody that was watching this got a ton of value, and you already got the sample chapters. If you're here, so take the leap. For $47, you can get the full book, all 3 bonuses. There's a 60-day money-back guarantee. Really, you can't go wrong. You'll make twice that much on the first night that you rent out your place on Airbnb. So everybody check it out. And thanks, Jasper and Huzefa, for joining. Any last words, and then we're gonna take it home.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, great. Jasper and Huzefa, authors of Get Paid for Your Pad. You can grab the full book at optimizeyourairbnblisting.com. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.
All right. Good night. Bye.
Peace.